Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm sorry if the picture's a little bit dark, but I'm standing here in my living room at the brightest part of the day at this time of the year, so I can shoot this video because I really don't feel like bringing that big heavy light in here. And so I'll do my best to brighten this up so you can see. But I thought it would be a good idea to talk a little bit about how I cook and bake on a non-cook wood stove, because we don't have a cook stove. We just have a standard flat top wood stove. We actually had a mason come redo our fireplace, which when we got this place, it originally had an insert, because that was the big thing for a while, is they converted fireplaces into wood stoves by putting inserts in there, but they were never really that efficient. And so what we had him do is we had him redo all the brickwork here so that we could actually put a freestanding wood stove, and we got the biggest one we could fit in here, and we also made sure that we got one with a flat top, so that rather than the step top one like we used to have, and that way it would give us a bigger cooking surface. And so you might see some smoke coming off here because I'm actually in the process of re-seasoning the top of this thing. And I use coconut oil when I do that. Sometimes I'll use lard, but now's the time to do it while the fire is really hot, so that can, really cook into the stove. And I try to do it a couple of times a year. So anyway, that's what's going on here, and I'm going to keep doing that a lot. The bad part about it is it does make the house a little smoky, but it's worth it once it's done, because that's going to help prevent rust. So anyway, I want to show you some of the tricks that I've used in being able to cook and bake most things right here on the wood stove. What you can see back here in this, well, right back over here, I've got a pot of coffee sitting there just staying warm. This pot of water is perpetually here, and this is what we typically use for washing our dishes, so this is always here. Or if we have a power outage and we need to get ourselves cleaned up and we need some hot water, then I use this. I have a big stock pot that I actually keep in the bathroom, and what that does is that sits down in the tub, and then what I do is I pour the hot water into that big, it's actually a canner is what it is, a hot water bath canner. I have two, so one's for that and the other one's actually for canning. And then pour that hot water in there, and then add just enough cold water in there so that we can have some warm, water that's warm enough, and it ends up being just enough water for us to get cleaned up with. We both can actually get cleaned up with that, and just use a cup, pour it over our heads. And sometimes I'll still do that even when we're not having power outages, just as a way to save money and to always just stay in practice on the best way to clean up without having our hot water tank running. Because remember, we are not fully off grid. We are partially off grid. We have solar panels, we have our wood heat, and various other sources. And if you're interested in more ways that we things that we do to do things off grid, I'll go ahead and link to my video the chat video I did on living partially off grid and why we do that. So anyway, that's why this is always here. Mostly it gets used for washing dishes, but you just never know when you need some hot water on hand, and whether we have power or not, that's what this is used for, and that saves us money on electricity. So the wood stove is multi-purpose for us. So up here, and I'm going to go ahead and put the camera up a little bit, I actually have two clotheslines, and you can see back here, these are actually the old 70s mirror panels. Remember those things? Those were here when we got the place. I left them because our living room is small and it's dark, and so this helps keep it bright. And you can see over in this corner right here, back behind my head, that's actually our entryway or our front door. And you see those clothes hanging up there? We actually have a rod hung up across the two door frames. So one is the closet on this side, and that's our front door. So that's what you'll see, those clothes hanging there. So big, heavier things and things I can hang up, shirts and stuff like that, get hung on there, and then the rest of the clothes and laundry gets hung on these two lines. There's two here, and they've been here for probably about, well, at least 20 years, maybe 25 years. Pat hung these across here. Not the prettiest thing to have in a living room, but hey, it gets the job done, and we don't have to run our dryer. So anyway, coming back down here, you'll see on this side is the drying rack that Patrick built for me. There's actually two here. They're stacked on top of each other. And whenever I need to dry grains or meats or anything that can handle a higher heat, I will actually take that and set it up here on top. There's just enough room for that to sit up here just to the side of this where this pot is. You can see I have the pot sitting on a cast iron. It's actually an old grill that came out of a barbecuer. So we have several of those. We actually picked them up at the dump because people are always dumping their grills. So we'll go out there and collect these cast iron grill pieces. And I have one sitting right down there on top where you see that pot sitting. I have it there because I'm going to show you something. And then over here is another one right here on this side. And so this is actually for lumber or for holding firewood. And then I have some various trivets sitting here, and I'll talk about those in a minute. So whenever I'm cooking or baking a soup, a casserole, a chicken, a roast, anything like that I'm going to put in a pan like this, or even a smaller size one. This one here I brought in because I want to show you. It fits just perfectly. You can see I don't know if you can see it or not because it's pretty dark, but there's another one of those grills, those cast iron grills, sitting back there, and that's where I sit my things to bake, and it's the perfect spot. It fits right back in there perfectly, and I still have this room out front to do whatever. I can fry things. I can get another pot of coffee going right out here. When I'm making the coffee, it sits right on the wood stove. Right now the fire is actually really hot. When the tea or the coffee is done, it goes back onto one of these trivets or it sits higher. So right here I have a bigger round trivet. This one tends to sit higher than some of the other ones I have, like this one. Now most of these kind of trivets I've picked up at garage sales, and I like the various heights that they give me. So if I'm just wanting to keep something warm, sitting it on here or here, or if the fire is really hot and I want to cook it on a lower heat but it's too hot to sit it directly on the wood stove, these kind of things are perfect for that. Now this round one sits up a little bit higher, so that's mostly going to be used for just keeping things warm. And then I can go a step up by taking this. I picked up at a garage sale as well. It's actually, I think, for holding plants or something like that. It's supposed to be cute. But I've taken this and I can actually sit this on top of that, like that. Or I can use that by itself depending on what I'm using this for. Now sometimes when I just have a few orange peels to dry, I will use this method here rather than pulling up that thing, where I'll set this on top of here, then set the orange peels there. And that's just, it's not so close to the heat that they burn, but close enough that they can dry them quickly. And then you can see I keep a lot of these things on hand. I make these, I actually sell them on my store, and I have them hung up here on the mantle. And so these are for using with the cast iron. These ones here, actually I designed these ones myself because these are perfect for everything. I can, obviously these skinny ones are best for the skillets, but these work for everything else, such as picking up the coffee, picking up the pan, or even removing the lid and picking up this pot of water. These fit perfectly over that, and for removing the lid when you see that steam coming out of there, that water's nice and hot. Okay, so that's why these are always handy. And then a couple more trivets I have. Both of these tend to sit a little higher, so these are good when I need things to sit higher and I'm just trying to keep stuff warm, especially if I'm cooking like biscuits and gravy and cooking eggs and some beef bacon on here all at the same time. I can have graduating heights to help keep my gravy warm once it's done and all that. So I can usually do all that stuff on here at the same time. So, and I'll try to get some pictures in here too, so if I haven't already, so you can kind of get an idea by those how I do that. There is a trick to the biscuits. Now, I don't cook my yeast breads and other type of breads that I want browned on top on the wood stove. Those get baked in my toaster oven, and a lot of times I can run that off our solar power, but even when I have to run it off public power, it's still going to use a less electricity than using the full-size range. And then I also have the propane camp stove that I keep back in our bigger room there, close to the sliding glass door, so if we have a power outage and I want to bake some bread and I don't want to use the wood stove because it's not going to brown it on top, then I can use my propane camp stove in there just with the door open. I'll show you how I do that right up here. I got a video. And also remember, I do link those videos down below too, so you don't have to hassle with the iCards if you don't want to. So using the various trivets, and I do have somewhere around here, I think it's outside, I do have a thermometer that sits on there if I really need to know how hot the stove top is. Most of the time I don't worry about it. I can just kind of tell by how hot it is, and then as things cook, I can just move them up to the graduated heights as is needed. But like if we're going to make popcorn on this, it has to be hot, hot, hot. And so we need the thermometer for that so we know how hot it is, because I think we have to have it at about 400 degrees up there for it to, or even 450, in order for it to actually pop the popcorn without and actually pop it all. You have to have your heat pretty hot for that. So we have one of those whirly pop things that we picked up a few of them, and we got them all at garage sales, all of them. I think at least 2 of them have never even been used. And one I ended up giving to a friend. So anyway, that's basically how I do that. So quick breads are a really good thing to cook on here. I've actually done pizza crust on here. That works pretty good. You can actually bake a pizza right on top of here, no problem, because the part that you're really trying to brown on the pizza is the bottom, and the top, you just really want it warm. Typically, you don't want it to get too brown on top, so you can bake a pizza on here. And then I have a pot that's bigger than this that I could cook a small turkey on right out front. Now, if it's a really big turkey, like we usually try to get at least once a year, get one really big turkey. I usually do that in the conventional oven because it is the pan I have to use for that, the big turkey roaster, is a little bit too big for this. But for the most part, other than breads and pies, I can do, breads as far as yeast breads, things you want browned on top. I can do pretty much anything else right here. Soups, sauces, anything. Very easy to do right on the stovetop. And sorry, but the lighting keeps changing because the clouds out there are moving around. Now, I want to show you one more thing that I do is right here I have this little bar light. It's all, it's in a bar shape. It's all LED lighting. And so believe it or not, even though that gets really hot, we've had that thing for years and it's lasted us forever. I think we got a set of 2 of them at Costco years ago. And so it's just a matter of changing out the batteries once every year. I think once a year is about the most we have to do it. I did just change the batteries out because the light was getting really dim. But anyway, if I need extra light down here to see what I'm doing, I just flip that on and that makes it easier. The only bad part is it doesn't light way back there, but typically that's not where I really need the light anyway. And so that tends to be sufficient. So I hope that gives you an idea. So if you're interested in, if you don't have a wood stove yet and you're like, well, I don't really have room in my kitchen for a cook stove. I don't really have a room anywhere for a cook stove, but I do want to at least get a wood stove. Any kind of just flat top wood stove. You can use the step, what do they call it? The step where it's like lower and higher. It's got the 2 levels, because I've done that before. I've cooked on that before. It's just you're a lot more limited for space, but you can do that too. You can cook on that too. So here's some ideas. If you have a regular wood stove or you're planning on getting one, don't have room for a whole cook stove, there are lots of ways you can cook and bake right here. And I use mostly stainless steel and cast iron, and then these steel pans like this, the enamel coated pans. And that's typically what I use to bake on. Sometimes I'll use the Corelle glass baking dishes with a lid too. Those work really well. And most of the time though, anything you're going to bake for a long period of time, you want to set it on some kind of trivet like I always do back here. And if the fire is just really hot and I can't seem to get it to not be so hot because our wood is like super dry, then I'll just lay another thing down on top so that sits up higher and it bakes it just fine. And that's why I never use a slow cooker really. I bought a slow cooker several years ago and I finally used it once this last summer for the first time, but I've had it for years. But I had it mostly for summer days when I want to bake something, don't have a fire going, and I can run it off my solar power. But most of the time, this is where all the magic happens for cooking and baking, no matter what it is. And obviously, you can use your dampers and different things like that to get the fire as hot as you need it there. But still, you know, you got to still kind of experiment and work around. And I didn't mention how I do the biscuits. I do actually have a video on that. It's old, but it's going to be dark anyway because it's in the living room. I'll go ahead and link to that up here and down below so you can see how I bake biscuits and get them browned on both sides, because biscuits you can do on here, and I do it frequently. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video on ways that you can be a little more off-grid if you're not already, or at least be a little bit more frugal using the wood stove that you have, or the one that you may be considering getting. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.